Good day to you all. It is my great pleasure to welcome all of you on behalf of the International United Women Federation today. International United Women Federation was established with the mission to create a global network dedicated to empowering women and achieving gender equality through skills development and hands-on initiatives. Our vision is a world in which women and girls face fewer barriers to education, leadership, financial security, and social justice. International United Women Federation launched this event as a great initiative supporting the growing participation of women in STEM field as we close the gap in this field. We believe that this conference will help girls and women understand the science relies on diligence, ingenuity, and work ethic. These skills are not gender-based traits. STEM requires extremely competitive individuals, and women are more than capable to excel. Women proved that they can shine in this field, and many women set the path for others. Many young girls would be encouraged to explore this STEM field. A number of successful women have joined us today to share their stories, and we believe that you will be encouraged. It is my great honor to welcome our speakers, Yvette Curtis, Project Manager, Starbucks, Starley DeGrace, a proud Indigenous woman and a people-centric leader, Yingli Huang, Regional Business Manager at Roche Diagnostics Asia Pacific, Sakafe Moradi, CEO of an online reading tutor, Sangari Sudhar, founder at Overqualified Housewife, Ivy Wong, creator, director, publisher at Splash Interactive Limited. Thank you so much for joining us as speakers today. I would like to thank your team who worked tirelessly to put this conference together. And once again, a warm welcome and thank you for all joining us today. Olga, over to you. Thank you.
Welcome. Good morning, everyone. So please let us know that you can hear us from in the chat. Just let us know where you're coming from and what you're expecting. We're going to use the chat very actively through this presentation. So I really want to invite you to post any questions that you have, either now that you're expecting or through the presentation. So for now, Banu, it's over to you. It's over to me.
Yeah, I think we can proceed with introducing IUWF, but as Raji and Olga echoed, really happy to see so many people joining us today. We're really trying to bring more awareness and more interest towards STEM technology. And right after Olga, we will be starting off looking at why it is important to have women represent in STEM careers as well. So Olga, over to you so we can start off with a quick intro about IUWF. And then we will pivot back to why we're all joining the party today. Thank you.
Fantastic. So welcome, 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 and thank you for joining us today. I'm very excited to have the opportunity to share with you an overview of the International United Women Federation. You heard our president and co-founder, Raji Patterson, on what is our mission and our vision. But today I'm just going to be giving you a little bit of a presentation so you can see it. We are a nonprofit organization. The impact that we want to make in our community is going to be showing through these slides. And we're going to share a little bit of our story. So where is it that we come from, our mission, and the project that we're really, really funding right now in our hearts. The International United Women Federation supports women and girls that are from any kind of living, free of all forms of violence. We want them to achieve gender equality, education, income security, and decent work. We serve girls and women of all ages, particularly girls and women in rural areas with limited or no access to education, women with disabilities, widows, low-income families, and single mothers. But mostly we want to inspire all of the women to know that they can do anything that they have in their heart to do. The International United Women Federation has as a mission to be dedicated to create an environment in which every woman and girl can face fewer barriers to realize their full potential. And that's why we just decided to establish this to accelerate the progress on meeting women's needs worldwide. It's dedicated to create all of this that you're seeing, that you're going to be seeing through the pillars. So we have 3 main pillars where we work on: education, economic empowerment, elimination of violence. We believe that education is top priority, and it is the most important investment we can make collectively and individually, as it is the backbone to develop positive changes in our society. Along this way, this is the reason why we have this presentation today and the series that we're going to be doing. Rural women work hard and they contribute to food production and are key players in the effort to achieve all the UN Sustainability Development Goals. We support several projects that generate economic empowerment for women, improving their civil leadership skills, mechanisms to get financial assistance, and business administration skills to drive their sustainable projects. Violence against women continue to be a global concern. We run several awareness programs from online events to on-ground workshops towards educating them on their rights, the resources available to them, and so their voice can be heard. Hold on. Now, this is like we're going to run through the timeline. So just bear with me because this journey started in 2018 when our co-founders knew that all they wanted at the time was addressing the challenges faced by women with hands-on approach via local ground level initiatives that will be responsible for unique needs and circumstances of a particular community rather than a larger top-down approach. We also wanted to provide the opportunity to community members to become directly involved in creating change, which will help to build a sense of ownership and investment in the outcome. So, because that was so amazing, in 2020, then the first Women Empowerment Project started. And this is a project that continues growing right now as a freshwater fish farmer. And this project started in Aparai, Sri Lanka. For this project, the International United Women Federation was partnering with local NGOs, members of the parliament, the Ampuneri USA team, and the Truth of Power Foundation. In the first 2 phases, 100,000 fingerlings were released to the tank, where 85 people or 85 families live around it. And then in the 3rd phase, 20 fishermen were provided with their boats through the women's organization to one of the communities in Aparai, Sri Lanka, where 200 people are directly benefited. So just a few months later, in February 2021, a board of directors was established. So then based on the projects and the success, then we established our board of directors, and then later in March, we officially became a registered nonprofit organization. We also held our first of our many international conferences. The first conference was on the topic Engaging Women in Modern Politics and Leadership. We continue implementing ground level projects, and then in January 2022, we established the first community cooperative. And then in March of 2022, just a year ago, we have the first parallel event on rural women empowerment and sustainability development along the UN CSW 66. And now we have established local female lead support organizations in June 2022. We anticipate, like now, in the last March, we went, all of us, and we're on the headquarters of New York, participating on the CSW 67, where we have the opportunity to share our mission, our vision, and what we're doing right now. And fast forward to today, we have successfully completed 17 community projects with grassroots collective impacts, including our most recent activity earlier this month, consisting of a 5-day leadership training program with over 100 youth participants in Sri Lanka. And with that, then we know that this is going to be impactful because our pillars allow us to, sorry, this is going backwards and I don't know why. Okay, I was like, this is not the way. So these projects have been giving us a lot of satisfaction, not only to our founders and co-founders, but also to the community and our partners who have been helping us through the process. So these are some of the pictures that we have from the project that we have been leading. So I'm so sorry, this is no moving. Okay, so then these accomplishments include the freshwater fish tank that I said, the group farming project, digging bore well, microfinancing for rural village development, highland agriculture development, school supply distributions. And then we have been hosting a lot of conferences, one of them, the one that you're presenting on today. These are some of the pictures that we have from the project that we have been involved, where you can actually see the girls, women, and communities that has been impacted by the amazing amount of projects. And this could have been done with the help of our partners, the ACCP, to Power Foundation, the North Carolinas for Peace, and the WAFs. All of them have been helping us to be where we are today. So I thank you. And if you are interested in getting involved with us, if you want to participate and be part of this project and this dream, then we welcome you to join us in LinkedIn, follow us in Facebook as well, or just send us an email to the info@iuwf@gmail.com. So for this, thank you so much for joining us today. Over to you, Banu.
Thank you so much, Olga. I think we got a great intro into what IUWF stands for and all the things that we have been achieving in the last little while. Even though we're a young organization, we are a proud organization, and we want to make that change that we're really looking for. So if we want to see the world change, you have to be the change. And I think we're trying to imbibe that characteristic within the work that we're doing. And we hope to create many more milestones and achievements going forward. Before we step into the conference itself, I did want to bring us all on the same page when it comes to STEM technology and what STEM stands for. What does the world actually look like for STEM careers and so on and so forth? A lot of times we are coming into a world where we have the benefit of being exposed to some of these things. For example, me, myself, I knew that STEM was something that I was interested in, but I also had a few family members who were already in that environment for me to understand what it was. But a lot of us don't, come to this world, don't even realize what STEM actually means and what it actually stands for. So we wanted to provide a quick introduction so everyone really understands what STEM technology is about and why it is important for women to have their own representation within this domain as well. So when you look specifically at the STEM ecosystem, there are different layers that we're looking at. At its core, STEM actually stands for 4 main domains, which are careers in science, in technology, in engineering, and in mathematics. So when you think about the traditional scientists that we refer to, engineering graduates, people who work in statistics and economics, all these subjects actually fall under the STEM umbrella. And if you go into specific government websites that talk about, especially if you've looked at immigration requirements and so on and so forth, you will have an understanding of what kind of jobs are actually classified under the STEM technology. You might also see a variation of STEM, which is called STEAM, S-T-A-M, where A stands for another variation within the scientific world. Now, within that STEM technology, when you say that you want to get a job in that space, traditionally, you do need the educational qualifications associated with that STEM education to go into a pure role that is associated with STEM. However, for folks who are looking to kind of work in STEM, but then they have slightly different interests in terms of how they want to approach it, or even if you're just looking to get an introduction into what STEM technology is about, you've got something called the STEM enablers, which means that generally, no job can actually sustain on its own. You need to be part of an ecosystem where there are other aspects. For example, you can go to work, but unless someone feeds you at home, it's going to be tough for you to go to work. So really, the people who are feeding you are enabling you to do your work even better than what you would do normally. So in this case, when we're looking at STEM enablers, there are some supporting ecosystems, such as being in business, that is related to running that STEM business itself. You can be in legal, understanding the technology behind some of these systems. For example, when we talk about Facebook privacy, when we talk about data regulations and so on and so forth, you really have to understand how the engineering works, how the solution works, before you can talk about the legal aspects of it. So such roles actually form the layer of STEM enablement. And last but not the least, you've got the periphery, which means that even though you might not necessarily know completely what is being done within STEM, you are still able to know some aspects of it. For example, working with finance for STEM technology. We know that the Silicon Valley is really rich when it comes to a lot of startup businesses, but you can't really talk about VC and funding and the finance aspect of it without really understanding what the technology associated with that is. Albeit you might not go as deep as, say, someone who's working purely in STEM, but you will still need to understand the technology. And these are ways that you can actually involve yourself in some form of a STEM related career, which would give you the benefit and the satisfaction of actually understanding the science behind it. But at the end of the day, regardless of the role that you go into, you're only going to learn as much as you want to put the effort into it as well. So do understand that it also depends on your personal characteristics and behavior and what kind of person you are in general to thrive in this career as well. The next thing that we want to talk about to you is, why should women have a seat at the table? We often talk about, hey, you know, I'm not getting the same opportunities as some of the other members of the society. We have not been able to expose ourselves to a lot of the scientific careers. And we always wonder why we need to have a seat at the table. Is it not sufficient to just support other people who are in STEM technology or in STEM career? Why do we need to be at the table? So when we look at the statistics of some of these roles, we can see that there's a very small percentage, or less than 50%, in terms of our representation, whether that be the career that we pick, whether that be representation at a master's level, at a PhD level. And we are generally outnumbered. So I remember when I started my career in a technology department, I used to be the only female sitting in the room while everyone else was male. Now, I had really powerful allies in the room because they supported my education, they supported my growth in career, they supported my learning at work. So I was fortunate enough. In fact, I always credit one of my previous bosses who recognized the talent in me and he promoted me. And that powerful act of supporting you can propel you forward in terms of your understanding and your interest in the career as well. On the other hand, if you don't have very powerful allies, this is a topic that we would be talking about in our conference today. It is a bit more difficult, but it's not impossible. We do have to put in a lot more effort to project ourselves forward, but understanding that we need to be at the table forms the main layer of confidence when we think about why we need to be represented. Two examples that I want to share with you whereby it makes it more important for us to be at the table. One is a concept of shrink it and pink it. I don't know how many of you have actually heard about this, but this is almost derogatory in my opinion. Basically, what they do is they do whatever they need to do for the males in the society. So in this example, testing car crashes or testing military equipment. They bring in sufficient sample size with men, they test everything out and everything seems to be fine for them and we get a solution. And all they do is, hey, on average, women tend to be smaller than men, so let's shrink it. And they tend to like pink, so let's pink it. And now suddenly all the equipment that you've designed for men becomes suitable for women because it's smaller in size and it's pink in color. It's one of my pet peeves that I never find razors in any other color other than pink. I'm not a big fan of pink. I don't mind pink, but you know, sometimes it's nice to have different colors. The other example that I want to give you is, are you cold at work? How I've heard many times where women are freezing. I mean, I come from Canada, so I have a little bit of a higher tolerance for cold, but in general, women do feel cold at work. And that is because traditionally the algorithms that have deduced human body temperature, the algorithms that have been set behind climate control in buildings have received their data or taken their data from a male sample population. So it's never suitable for women to be sitting in these rooms because we are always feeling cold because it's not really connected to our sample size and how we feel. And one last example that I think a lot of you would have followed in the news is about a panel of men who are making decisions about abortion laws. There wasn't a single woman represented on that panel. And when we think about our representation, it goes beyond STEM education. Is if we start losing that interest in our own affairs and our own representation in multiple levels within the government, within the community, and all the other roles as well, not just within STEM technology, we lose our rights. That is what the bottom line basically means. So I hope that today, with the conference that you're going to be going through and with the inspiring stories from our speakers, you are developing an interest towards STEM technology as well. Of course, we're not forcing you to get into something you don't like, but definitely if you see a flavor and you have the aptitude to pick something that aligns with STEM education, we would love to see you represent the entire community as a whole. And we would love to see what kind of strides we can make going forward. And with that, I will stop sharing and we can jump into our conference today. And I'm super excited to be inviting 6 great speakers. One correction I did want to make is, I know in the beginning we mentioned that we wanted your participation through Zoom chat. Unfortunately, to ensure that we're going through a safe space and making sure that there are no challenges that we run into in the chat space, you will be able to communicate with the hosts, and we will make sure that any of your questions that are being posted are answered. You will notice that in the chat section, when you click on the drop down arrow, you would see a bunch of us in the top list showing up as either host or co-host, and you can select any one of us and you can publish your questions, and we should be able to receive them on our end, and we'll make sure that we address those. And with that, I would like to start with our first guest of the day, our guest speaker. She is, again, someone known to me, as I mentioned in the beginning before we had the larger audience join. I feel like this is a bit of a tea party for me personally, because I've had the pleasure and the benefit of knowing all these folks personally. So first of all, I'm so proud to introduce our special guest, one of Canada's top 50 change makers and 17-year-old veteran at IBM, Starlee DeGrace. She is proud First Nations woman, part of the Chippewas of Georgina Island. Starlee started at IBM in 2006 and is currently a global diversity and inclusion, Native, Indigenous, and workplace engagement leader for IBM. Based out of Toronto, Canada, she enjoys giving back to her community, refuting Indigenous stereotypes, and educating people on the realities Indigenous communities face. Excuse me. We will be having a chat with Starlee to begin with regarding her own career progression and how she has grown. So please join me in welcoming Starlee. If you're ready, Starlee, you can unmute yourself.
Thanks, Manu. I feel like everybody should have intros like that in their day-to-day before meetings. Thanks for having me.
Yes, we are proud to have you. And just looking, I know that I've only really taken a small slice of the cake that you are. There are so many more things to follow through in terms of your achievements. And we will be posting some of the URLs that Starlee has shared with us so that you are able to follow her through LinkedIn and see some of the changes that she's making to the community as well. So Starlee, to start off, I wanted to focus a bit more on your educational background and what specific role or function do you play at your company? We did hear the title that you hold, but I really want people to know a bit more about what are the functions that or things that you do in a day-to-day basis that makes your life so enriching.
Absolutely. Love this question. So before I get to the question, I just wanted to just like super quickly introduce myself. I know that you did a great job, Manu. So Starlee DeGrace, my pronouns are she, her, hers. As Manu mentioned, member of the Chippewas of Georgina Island First Nations. But I also would be amiss if I did not take a moment to acknowledge the land that I speak to you from, and that is of the Williams Treaty First Nations. And so thank you again for including me in today's session. As you mentioned, I've worked with IBM for 17 years. And if I'm being honest, I did not think that I would still be here 17 years later when I started. I've shared my story quite a number of times, and I promise I'm super chatty, and I know there's limited time. There is a longer story to this, but I always wanted to work for IBM since I was 10. And that was before I knew what STEM was and what like all the components of it. I was not good in science or math, but it was actually a stranger who worked at IBM at the time, came and did a technology camp at my school. And I tell the story. She was dressed in this perfectly tailored suit. And for me, my 10-year-old self thought that represented money. And so I thought that that's way out of my circumstance. And keep in mind, I was 10. So, I mean, anything could be perceived in a different way. But I knew that that's what I wanted to do. But again, I wasn't good at science or math. And you made a comment at the beginning, Benu, that I think was really key to this is I think that sometimes when people think STEM, they immediately think, at least from an IBM, a technology specific place, that it needs to be, you need to be a developer, or you need to be, you need to be creating applications or, in project management. But this person who spoke to me that day, really highlighted some things that changed the trajectory. She made it clear that, there's tech recruiting, there's tech accounting, there's tech, there's somebody who decorates the buildings to decide how appealing they are. And we don't necessarily make those connections immediately. And so I share that with you for a couple of reasons, because the words that we use matter. And so, fast forward, spent 15 years in sales doing, client facing. I graduated with a marketing administration degree and, I'm sorry, my apologies, diploma from Seneca. And I knew that I love to talk to people. And so through that process, I was able to have a successful sales career, but in my heart of hearts knew that I wanted to be doing something else. I wanted to make the path easier for women, for Indigenous women, for members of the BIPOC community. Like, I wanted to make it easier, and I didn't know how to do that. So the self-talk that I was giving to myself is, I can't do it. I don't have an HR background. But what I didn't realize was the importance of the transferable skills. And so understanding that I sold into sales, I was selling clients solutions, really listening to what they needed, and lining them up with IBM technology. And if it wasn't IBM technology, that was okay too. I got to talk to them in a meaningful way. And now what I get to do when I made my first transition, my first career pivot at IBM to talent acquisition, I was talking to candidates. I was talking to people through what initiative that I call Tea with Starlee. And I was talking to them, really lining them up with their dream jobs at IBM. And so that transition in 2020 was really due to the recovery of Indigenous children across Canada. It was a moment for me where I thought, I've been dragging my feet. How on earth could I drag my feet and prevent myself from making a transition when those children didn't even get the opportunity to go and chase their dreams? And so I just jumped in, all in. And again, it took me 2 years to figure that out, but I said yes. And then I did some fantastic work with a program at IBM called PTech, which is really a 6-year program that encourages 4 years high school, 2 years post-secondary, coming out and making sure that they don't have to leave their community. Indigenous people don't need to leave their community. And so that was a lot of words, but I really just want to share that 8 months later, after I had made my first transition, the opportunity to be the D&I leader for Native Indigenous communities came up. And again, I have to say yes. I have no idea. I have lived experience, but I didn't necessarily know what that was going to entail. But what I realized was how important your lived experiences is. So I think that for those that are attending today's session, just, the words that you use really matter. And when you say you can't, you won't. And if you say you can, you can. And so now what I get the awesome privilege to do is really impacting policy to making sure that things that are happening within IBM have an Indigenous lens, that there are considerations for things like land acknowledgement, for time off for employees, community engagement, and just understanding safe spaces and creating that culture, and making sure that we're going to the right places for recruiting. So if I think about going back to where I initially started, making sure that we're going to the right place to find Indigenous talent, and really highlighting being that person that I had when I was 10 to somebody else who can now consider themselves in careers in tech.
Amazing, amazing story. There's just so much I want to reiterate from what you mentioned, Sterling, because there are just so many words that were powerful in what you said. And you were saying that it was too long, but it was a loaded question. When we just ask someone, what is your educational background? We tend to just fall back in that traditional style of thinking in saying, what is the piece of paper that I have? But truly, education is a culmination of so many different things that you have reiterated. It was just that simple instance where you felt that lady in suit who was rich at the time, who made a profound impact in you in changing the way that you think. It was the person who gave you that little nudge up to say that, hey, we've opened up the doors for you, come into IBM and kind of explore your world there. And it not only just spoke about yourself and how you see education as an all-rounded aspect. You basically told us how IBM is basically looking after its employees and making sure that it's looking at all the different bases and not just one perspective and saying, as you said, a developer or someone who's creating applications. It's just so much more. And I wish we had more time. And of course, one thing I failed to miss in my previous presentation was we do have monthly series as well as part of this conference. So if you feel that you want to hear more from a specific speaker, please let us know. Please let us know in the chat. We're happy to invite them again. And this is a request to the speakers as well. If you enjoyed this experience, we would love to have you back in one of the monthly sessions, because exactly as Starlee said, you guys have a wealth of experience that is just going to be a beautiful inspiration for everyone who's attending. So we would love to have you back as well. Starlee, just in the interest of time, I've got one more question for you. Is you kind of mentioned this as you were talking about your experience so far, but in your opinion, what is that one thing that you think needs to change, whether that be the way the market is coming back, or looking at what how women need to be supported, or is it more of what we need to think internally as women in terms of saying, hey, I need to change my mindset a little bit so that we're able to get that seat at the table, we're able to participate in these STEM careers and so on and so forth. What are your thoughts?
Yes, I love that. So I think that as I mentioned, it's the way that we speak to ourselves. So I think that if I was thinking about one thing, it's the narrative, and the narrative often is us versus them, but it's us and them, right? And we create these moments of division and competition with men, with other women, right? We're fighting for seats at the table, we're fighting to have our voices heard, but really there are systematic challenges and changes that need to happen, but we can't do it alone. We need to be doing them together. And I talk a lot about the human to human experience. We're just one person talking to another person trying to make it work. And if we continue to perpetuate that narrative, the progress is going to continue to be slow, but we can do lots of things. We just have so much potential, and we just need to step into that. In many cases, sometimes that is can come with moments of imposter syndrome, which are okay. I don't like to say people have imposter syndrome, but moments. And so I think that the way that we speak to ourselves and in the larger population is really important.
Amazing. We actually have time for one more minute, so I'm going to be testing your skills in brevity with a 1 minute answer. But I wanted to ask you, what does work-life balance mean to you? This is a phrase that's thrown at women so many times that if I saved a penny every time I heard it, I would be a millionaire right now. But I'm curious, with someone who has done so many different things, what does work-life balance mean to you, or does it exist at all?
I don't subscribe to work-life balance, because that just sets us up for failure. It means if I'm moving one way, something else is failing. If I'm moving the other way, there will be days, weeks, months that work is the priority. There'll be days, months, weeks that family is the priority. I really focus on work-life integration, which means, especially in a global role, that means that if I have to I'm here and available for my clients, for my stakeholders. And if I have to take a call at 8 or 9 o'clock at night, I'm going to be okay with that. But that means that, I'm not going to feel bad about taking a long lunch or going out and doing errands in the middle of the day or starting late, because I wanted to sleep in and get some extra, beauty rest. I'm not going to feel guilty about that because that is the integration. I bring my whole self to work. And Benny, you know this specifically. I'm the same here as I am in my work life. And so I think that those are a continuum that should be together. It's not this or that.
Wonderful, wonderful message. I hope that really sinks into a lot of women who are joining us who are constantly in that pressure of, oh my God, which one am I dropping? Which ball am I dropping? Which one do I need to juggle? We want you to have a stress-free, happy lifestyle as our male counterparts do as well. So it's definitely informative in that way. And I'm glad that someone who has achieved so many things, been so vulnerable. Thank you for that, Starlee. And it's been great having you as usual. We hope you join us again for one of our monthly series, but we can connect about that offline.
Absolutely. And I just want to say one last thing is I'm here. So for anybody who's watching the replay, I'm always here. I'm just a quick LinkedIn message away. I'm always here and happy to help. So don't hesitate. And thanks again for the team for having me.
Likewise, Starlee, and I can agree with Starlee on that. She is always here. She's been a great rock of support for people, even in my network, whenever I need to ask some question. As she said, I ping her on LinkedIn and she's always responsive. So I'm a testament to that. I also wanted to mention that if you still have questions, feel free to put them through in our chat box, and we will make sure that we provide you with a response as well, even if it's speakers who have kind of wrapped up their section. And with that, I would like to move on to the next member that we have today on our Zoom call. This member is actually one of the heroes during the pandemic, a healthcare professional. Huang Ying Li joins us from Singapore, where she is a regional business manager at Core Lab Roche Diagnostics for the APAC region. She has worn multiple hats in her career and in a domain where customer centricity is not necessarily a core skill, because they are just so used to working in the labs, and they feel much more at home with the germs in a petri dish rather than people who are outside. So in this case, Ying Li has tapped into the skill of customer centricity and brings diverse perspectives to projects, which is the need of the hour. Thank you, Ying Li, for joining us today, and please share your presentation with us. We look forward to hearing more from you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Let me just pull out my slides. Could you see my slides first thing first?
Yeah, we
Okay,
can. Go ahead.
Okay, so I think with Banu introducing me, I think one very good way was everybody seems to know a little bit more about healthcare from, well, the pandemic, right? With every pandemic from SARS and then SARS-CoV-2, and then who knows what's the next pandemic that's really on the horizons too. So let me share a bit of what healthcare really looked like, and perhaps also to tell you what is about a little bit about myself. World traveler, an avid listener, a healthcare enthusiastic, and also an individual with a strong relator talent. I think this will really resonate very well with the introduction. What does a strong relator talent mean? I enjoy working closely with people who work hard, very, very hard, okay? And this is very, very important for me in my journey in healthcare. So let me just pull up the second slide. Okay, so why healthcare? So as a kid, I'm sure that all of us has watched numerous TV shows. We've been visiting hospitals because of our loved ones were in there for numerous reasons. So I was always very intrigued. Well, the staff, they always draw blood from the patients. What do they do? Do they just throw it away? What do they really do with it? So I was really very curious as a kid, who are these detectives? And then as I grow up, and then the calling to be part of the detective work grew over the years. It kind of ate on me. And I kind of made up my mind, I'm very certain that I want to be in healthcare. So we all know that in healthcare, there are doctors, there are nurses, but hey, I like to be the one wearing the lab coat. It looks super cool to be wearing that. And that's the, the uniform we have for these detectives in healthcare. And for me in healthcare, it's also very important because it always allows me to find and provide solutions and answers to patients. I'm actually, powerful in my own way. Although I like to think I'm very, very powerful. I don't know how much I impact others. But with this, it also tells me that healthcare is so dynamic. I'm always loving the fact that I'm always searching and learning new things. Well, I'm still a detective at heart. Believe it or not, nothing has changed, even after 17 years in healthcare. So a little bit on why in healthcare. Then you can start to see like a bit of a career journey, like, oh, it's blank, right? So this is how everything started. It all started with the hard work in the laboratory. I was given the opportunity to work in the largest lab in Singapore, largest acute tertiary hospital. It was not the most modern setup in the past. That was like more than 15 years ago. Things are still very manual. I still put a microscope because, believe it or not, manual procedure are still very, very integral to this laboratory site in many parts of the world too. And of course, I do have the opportunity, as the previous speaker also mentioned, I love to talk too. So how was I given the opportunity to the IVD as well? You know, when you're working in the lab and things are down, the sales personnel visit the lab, the post-sales support people visit the lab, and then you started chatting, and then, hey, there was an opportunity in the company. Well, don't let it sleep, just grab on it. You are young, there's nothing to lose. Then, well, welcome to IVD, which is, well, the field of diagnostics, which is all into the limelight during the COVID pandemic. Of course, into the IVD, I was like given the opportunity to do a lot of exploration. I progressed from to a regional role. I also moved into a marketing role as well. So perspective grew and change over time. And of course, I'm also given the opportunity to live for new opportunities. I also joined the current company, which is Roche Diagnostics, which is also one of the leading players in IVD market. So, well, career journey is not so, I would say, so interesting. But what was important was I had the opportunity to transit from a local to a regional role. So I always remember when I was in the regional role, I had colleagues or customers from the South Asia countries, namely India, Pakistan, was asking me, why are ladies visiting us in this part of the world? Why not gentlemen? Because in other companies, it's always the guys. Okay, so I said, like, why are you asking me this question? We are the same, right? I can also come here to help you. And there's nothing for me to worry because I know you will take good care of us. You will make sure things are safe. Then we'll come to visit you. And that was so reassuring to them, right? So this was one of the interesting conversation I had too. So with this regional role, I had a lot of opportunities to visit so many people and so many stakeholders to learn about their experience. And also from my humble beginning, how do they make changes and impact the rest within their own arena of change? And also what really come to me very strongly was all the healthcare workers I've interacted, regardless of countries, what role they are playing, they all want to make a difference to patient care. And this really widened my horizon, like huge, that's beyond textbooks, beyond whatever things can read online too. So, well, of course, with the career development, there's also a little bit more personal. Our personality or my personality actually developed over the years and really built me into what I'm really coming up to this today. So when I was very young, when I was still young and new into the career, well, we are all learners. We are very curious. We are always very excited. What's there to learn? So much things to learn. I want to learn everything. I'm so greedy. Like, I want to learn everything, just grabbing here and there. I want to learn this and learn that. But after a while, you do know that you gain a lot of things that's very operational because we are also junior. We need to know, are we ready to go on to the next phase, right? So then, of course, with me being a chatty person in the laboratory, I always know that being a communicator is very, very important because when I step into IVD, being a good, or well, I wouldn't aspire to be a good communicator. I was also gaining skills like very, very, very analytical. I'm also given the opportunity to be a trainer, to teach others what I've learned and to share my knowledge. So on and off, I do have customers come, oh, do you remember that you taught me to use this, like a couple of years now, also like, oh, there's too many people have come across in this career in IVD. So as I also progress, there's also skills that's involved in problem solving. You have to be really good at doing multitasks, especially when you're in the regional role. There are so many things that's happening at, it's a Murphy's law. Things that happen, it all happens at the same time. And of course, as an innovator in the marketing role, you have to be very, very creative and versatile. There's not only one way, there are actually many, many different ways to do things, to look at things, to solve things, to promote things as well. So as I progress, I also pick up skills on product management. This gives me a new perspective of how things, what are the efforts that actually goes in to bring a good product to the market as well. And of course, as I also progress to the current company to explore new frontiers, I'm still very, very passionate about what I'm doing. And today I'm saying hello to you from Switzerland because I'm actually having an opportunity to have a global exposure too. So all this are things that you take stepwise, and you can see that my development is also not like a linear line. There are many ups and downs, there are curves. This is really life. Life is really so fun. So for me, it's also a lot of things about like self-discovery. I think this is really, really very important. For me, I realized that I am still very, very passionate about healthcare. There's no way I'm going to step out of it in the next at least 10 to 15 years. And with this, there's so much to learn. Like I'm still greedy, right? I still want to learn a lot of things. And most importantly, with COVID, are we really ready for pandemic X? Don't know. And secondly, I want healthcare workers, being how I started off in the whole journey, I want all of us to be really recognized. So this is something that I'm also very passionate recently, is to foster thought leadership in healthcare, particularly in the often neglected laboratory. Well, we call it Lab 2.0. I also want to provide solutions that cater to the needs of today and tomorrow. Customer centricity, projects, and also bring the diverse needs of APAC to the whole product. This is very, very important. I call it solutions for today and also for tomorrow. So, well, what gets me so far until today? For me, finding your passion is very, very critical. It's the most essential part. If you do not know what you're passionate about, what you're having fun about, it's difficult to find a direction in life and also in work as well. Remind others about your passion. If you forget, others will always remind you. Feeling it is very, very, very crucial because that really gives you the extra push when things are getting on the lower side of the whole scale. Be very, very bold and take risks. Without taking risks, I don't think I'll be getting to Switzerland today. I think I'll still most likely be still in the laboratory because day in, day out, you just get so used to how things are being done. But of course, there are also many friends of mine who love such things and also admire them a lot. There are always new opportunities and experience too. Well, all you have to do is take risks and really ask. Be chatty, just ask friends, ask strangers, ask what are they passionate about, ask what they are doing. Sometimes it's also very, very important. Be patient and wait. Because when you're waiting, you give yourself so much time that you can perfect your skill, your passion, bring it to excellence. And of course, this really pays off in terms of perseverance. So I hope that this short sharing of what I've experienced so far in the past 15 years in healthcare will be inspiring to others. And if there's any questions, feel free to ask me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ingli. That was wonderful. Every time I hear about stories from folks, it's just so inspiring. You almost want me to choose the career that you did, and I start second guessing myself as to why I'm in IT. But that being said, Ingli, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. One of the key things that I think that resonated with me when you were talking about is your ability to connect with people and your ability to chat. A lot of times, something that I have run into personally as well, because I used to be an introvert as well, and now you can't shut me up even during conferences. Like I just talk over speakers. But that being said, what is one of the things that you feel when it comes to dealing with vulnerability and talking to people? Because sometimes when you're chatting with people, in order to relate to them, in order to connect to them, you have to speak about some of the fears that you have, some of the things that you're scared about. So any thoughts on that, about how to deal with your own vulnerability, your own fears, especially when you're trying to connect to people?
Of course. So it's not a surprise that some of my top strength is actually empathy. I changed from talking about my own viewing, talking about weaknesses as a vulnerability, but well, change it into a strength. Because when you accept that you have like down times, you're vulnerable, you start to be very good at empathy, empathizing what others are. So it's quite an amazing skill, because for me, sometimes in a room of strangers, I could kind of like connect with the people, even without them saying much to me, that I start to empathize. So you have to be very mindful. It's not sympathy. It's a very, very different thing. Being empathy, you really put yourself into their shoes, and then you start to think like, oh, what is this person thinking? So when I actually reach out to anybody, I have so many internal conversations that goes, oh, should I say this? Should I say that? Really, sometimes just start with a hi. It did not be like a long story or a long essay. Really start by making each connection really personal. And as you know, like Banu, I'm talking to you, you're like in the center of my universe. You felt like I'm listening to you. I'm ignoring everything surrounding us. This is very, very important because then it also allows us, like, we can learn from so many people, not only from senior leaders, female leaders, from loved ones, from kids, because the way that people see the world, the way that people view things are so different. Everyone can be a teacher. Everything that you interact day in, day out, it adds up and it starts to make into this like very diverse role that this personality that I have. It's also very strong to how we portray ourselves from APAC, right? Because from Asia, there's so many cultures, it's so rich. So I guess this also make it more interesting for me. So yes, I'm chatty. Yes, I love meeting people, but it takes a while for me to warm up as well because I have a lot of internal conversation that's running into my mind before I say hi to you. Yeah.
I'm glad that you shared that vulnerability because a lot of people just look at us when you start chatting, you're like, oh, you're a natural, you're a pro, you can talk. But the amount of work that goes internally before you actually open your mouth and say something, it's a lot of effort for us as well, because at the end of the day, we're the same kind of human beings that we don't want to, hurt anyone. We don't want to say the wrong thing. We don't want to get embarrassed. So the amount of thought process that goes inside our head is a lot. I wanted to ask you one more question, and again, requesting for a 1-minute answer because we do need to move on to our next speaker. The part where you talked about, hey, I went through this and I actually want to help other people kind of go into that too. And you were talking about that thought leadership aspect. Can you give some thoughts around how you kind of changed your mindset from someone who was experiencing what STEM is like, being in STEM is like, and so on and so forth, to that step of becoming a leader in terms of understanding, hey, other people are going through this too, so let me help out to them. What made you switch to that kind of thought process? If you can share some feedback.
Okay, 1 minute, right? Okay, so it was really a chance opportunity. I think I was given this opportunity to step into the world of thought leadership really because of COVID. Because of COVID, there are so much restrictions, things that we cannot do, but there's so much good things that the healthcare professionals are doing. How can we make them be under the limelight? Like they deserve the attention, they deserve the recognition. Then I reached out to my colleagues and he told me that like, well, we can consider doing these things like we have this Lab Insights portal from the Asia Pacific in Roche. So they'll showcase powerful stories, experiences, because then I said, oh, wow, this is something that I can give it a go. There's no failure, really. Just don't be afraid to fail. Be brave, take the first step, because there are always experts around that you can ask them to go through with you. You're in safe hands. If you don't try, you will never know whether this great idea you have, it'll just stay within you and it'll just die within you. It's such a waste. Try, talk to the people about it. Is it really something good? And then, it starts to get a bit addictive. The first project, then the next, and then the next, and then like, oh wow, I'm starting to be like a star contributor to the platform too. That's what the owner actually called me. And she said, you have too much content, you have to slow down like others. I said, no, I'm driven. I want to think and I want to really have so many powerful stories in healthcare, especially those from ladies are really, really something that's also very inspiring. Something that I also try to see if could I collect more great stories into my secret bag and showcase it to the greater world. Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. I loved how you said that it is addictive. Good deeds are addictive. Say no to drugs, no to alcohol addiction, but yes to helping out other people, because it is indeed addictive. As you can see, a lot of people that you're seeing here on the platform, this is not the first time that they're helping other people. Even coming to this platform and voicing what they've gone through is doing good to the community. And as you can see, it's addictive because they're all back again for more. So with that, thank you so much, Yingli. I appreciate you joining us from Singapore, and I hope your work trip goes well as well, because I did hear you kind of mention you are in Switzerland. So I hope you get some time to go out and enjoy the snow and some delicious dairy products that is, key to Swiss culture. And with that, we will be moving on to our next speaker. And our third speaker for the day is joining us from Chennai, India, where homemakers are also known as housewives or queens of the house. And yet they face basic human working conditions and respect from their own family members. And it is this taboo and struggle that founder Shankari Sudhar wanted to break with her platform of overqualified housewives. With her background in IT and her frequent speeches on Indian speaker platforms such as Josh Talks and Startup Tamil Nadu and media channels, she has promoted this cause far and wide as the years would hear. So we're really happy to have a banter with Shankari on her contributions to the powerhouse of housewives. Welcome, Shankari.
Thank you, Banu. Thank you so much for having me here.
Of course, we're happy to have you. I know I kind of gave, again, a very small pie of your achievements. Is there anything else that you would like to add as part of your introduction? I should have done the same with Starlee. I totally forgot that question and I just jumped over to my interview, but I would like to give you the opportunity to just introduce yourself if there's anything else you want to add.
Sure. So a very good morning to all of you. I'm so happy to meet you all here. This is Shankari Sudhar and I'm talking from India. And, I am the first engineer from my family. So that is one thing I have to say here, because I come from a very small town in South India. And I was the first person to study engineering. So yeah, that is something I really cherish. So thank you.
Yep. Of course. And I think that is a wonderful, accomplishment that you should share, because you have truly that lived experience of being the first. You have seen some of the challenges that women face and how they go through these aspects. What really inspired you for overqualified housewives to begin with? Let's start with that. I mean, they are one of the communities or area or part of the society that tends to be ignored. It's sort of like, oh, they're helping me, so why would I even focus on that? So what made you kind of turn into that side?
So I was an IT engineer for around 8+ years. I worked in big MNCs, and I really thought that my life was set. I really thought that I'm just going places. But then motherhood happened. I never expected such a big change in my life. I never knew that women go through a lot during their motherhood. And when it happened to me, I was so scared. I was so scared that what will happen to my baby after that 6 months of maternity leave? Who will take care of my baby? How will I manage a job which was 9 hours before and now it is 12 to 14 hours after COVID? I was scared. And then I looked around for motivation. I thought that if I talk to my schoolmates and college mates, I'll get an idea. But unfortunately or fortunately, many of them were like me. They were at home. They were all toppers. They secured good marks. They got gold medals. And then after their college and after marriage and babies, they were at home. And I was like, what is happening? So I wanted to do something. So this is going to be my second innings, because I was not so confident about being a housewife. Because, by the way, I took a break after my maternity leave. I took a break. I was at home taking care of my baby, but I was not happy, because I felt like I am very dependent on my husband. And every day that took a toll in my self-esteem. So instead of doing something for my own in my second innings, I thought, why not help everyone who are just like me? And that's how Overqualified Housewives was born.
Oh, sorry, I started talking to people on mute. Amazing. That's great to know. And it is just so challenging and very interesting how motherhood changes your perspective on so many different things. Until then, you feel like you can take on the world. And suddenly when you have a little one next to you, like everything just seems doubly daunting. But at the same time, you're also doubly courageous, right? Because definitely that experience built this whole organization that you're running. Now, I have to follow up on that question and ask you, you now know what kind of skills is required or are required to be a housewife. You know what kind of skills you are developing, even though people say, oh, you're just at home, there's still a lot of things that you're doing. So can you share some of those skills? So even if you don't have a formal STEM education, what are some of the skills that you can tap into from either motherhood or running a household that you can now bring into your workplace and be proud about?
That's a very good question. So, many of us, even people with formal education in STEM, it is very difficult to get back to workforce after a couple of years break because the market changes rapidly. As you rightly said, degree, according to me, degree is just a piece of paper. It's all about the skills. So, internet is the magic here. So with internet, we can do anything we want. We can learn from the best teacher in the world, which is YouTube. So I always say, women, that please don't be shy because you are doing something which is awesome. You have done something incredible. So for sure you can get back to workforce. For sure you can get into whichever field you would like to go, because you can upskill anytime with the help of materials which is available in the internet. Just that we have to prioritize. I think a mother can do that really well. We have to use this skill of prioritizing and multitasking and get in here and upskill ourselves and understand that the skills which we have it's kind of different from skills what is required in the market. So we have to upskill ourselves in order to be of use in the market. So that is what I would say.
Wonderful. One of the things that you said, the part about upskilling really hit a sweet spot, because I was looking at, or I was reading something that a Navy SEALs are like one of the highly trained and very, very efficient group of defense mechanism that US has. And one of the things that they were saying is, I am not going to be trusting the person who is the most skilled in my team, but I'm going to be trusting the person who has the right attitude. And I think that's what we're going for over here, where housewives need to feel that passion coming from within. And every speaker who has spoken even before you, Yingli and Starlee, all of them were really passionate about what they wanted to do. So really speaking, STEM education, the foundation is really being passionate about what you want to do, and everything else is just going to fall in place. So thank you for echoing that sentiment. One other thing, I think you kind of mentioned this as well when we were chatting about this conference, is it's not just about the passion that the individual people have, but it's also kind of about the mentality of people around you. And you said that you are one of the first engineering graduates in your family. So I can imagine what kind of supportive environment you had and how many dreams your parents must have seen through you. So can you share a bit more about how your family members or people around you can actually improve your quality of life when it comes to STEM education or careers in areas where they've gone where no woman has gone before?
Yeah, so my family, they are one of the most supportive ones which I've seen, because there are still many women who are struggling to get that kind of a support. But by God's grace, I got that kind of a support from my family and my father, my mother. So my mother is uneducated; she didn't study. My father, he was running his small business, so they knew nothing about STEM education or about corporates or nothing. So but the only thing they believed was they believed in power of education. They made me to study well. They always encouraged me to dream big, because they believed in my potential. That is what I can say. Before I knew my potential and I knew my power, they saw something in me, and they always believed that I can do that and tap that potential. So my father, my brother, my mother, and then my husband in particular, they are some of the incredible human beings who have encouraged me throughout this journey. So I think it is very important for at times, when we talk about STEM education or when we talk about women empowerment, men feel like it's not my subject. It is not, I have nothing to do with that. But I strongly believe in the concept of he for she. UN has launched something called he for she, right? So I strongly believe in that, because without my father, my brother, and my husband, without their support, I may not be talking here now at this moment. So, they saw my dreams as their own and they encouraged me. And I really believe that the men who are here, they have to see that potential in their wife, their daughter, and their, girlfriend or something. So it is very important to encourage people around. So that is what I would say. Being a family, it's your responsibility.
I think there is a saying, I share your heritage as well. So there's a saying where they say that it takes a village to bring up someone, right? And that is what they're referring to. There's so many people around you that each person passes their positive energy to you, and that helps you grow. And as with the theme of the previous speakers as well, I also have a 1-minute answer question for you. With your background in IT industry, how did that shape what you are doing today? How did you feel that education helped you with what you're doing? Because obviously running a charity is very different from, say, an IT background, but I'm very curious to see how you brought the two worlds together.
Yeah. So being in IT, as I worked in technology, I know the power of technology, because, if I was not a STEM engineer, if I was not into STEM education, I might not know about the power of, impact it can create, the ripple effect it can create. Because if you have to scale your idea, and the vision to a large number of people, I think we should know technology. Technology can do it very easily. And as a woman who knows technology, it is quite easy for me, because I always think my idea at scale. I don't, keep boundaries. So that is the power, I guess. Yeah.
Amazing. So you've basically reinstated the need to even think about STEM. You don't have to have a STEM career if you finished education in STEM, but it definitely opens up a lot of paths in terms of your thought process, in terms of how you approach your life in general. So that was great. And I think one of the words that you used, the ripple effect, it's kind of going to seep into our next speaker as well. So right on time. And I didn't even have to prepare for this. So you guys are just meshing with good ideas together. I don't even have to try. So thank you for that, Shankari. And we move on to our next speaker. And she's one of my favorite ex-bosses, because she really made me think and grow myself too. I remember having very interesting conversations with Ivy Wong today. And the reason I talked about Ripple is because she is the founder of Ripple Foundation. And it was also based on a similar sort of idea whereby, a small movement can create a ripple effect. She is one of the coolest and hardest working entrepreneurs that I've ever come across personally. And she runs one of the world's largest advertising agencies, Splash Interactive, along with a second publishing company that also runs a very unique not-for-profit initiative called Kid Right for Kids since 2012. She's a teacher at 3 different design colleges in Toronto, and a philanthropist and a recipient of multiple awards, and the list keeps going on. And if you need to hear more about design and creativity, you have to hear from Ivy. So I know she's got like a gorgeous presentation, and I know this will be really pretty as well. So Ivy, on to you.
Okay, so can everyone see my screen okay? Yeah?
Yeah, I can see your screen. Yeah.
Okay, great. So so today I'm going to talk about from creativity to STEM, and here we go. So humans are natural storytellers. Obviously, we used to look in the skies and we can tell stories. We have an innate desire to create. That's the fundamental basis of the human, how we differs. And without creativity, there will be no innovation. And today's innovation ideas and creations are results for those who imagine and dreams, and that's really how we evolve. We express our creativity every day when we connect with people. We express our thoughts, we share ideas, and really, that's really the fundamental of how we create. But for some, like myself, my creativity stems from childhood. Always loved to draw, loved arts and craft, even make my own clothes and make things out of fan material, which I think we all do as a child. So when I was in high school, I had a friend ask me if I wanted to go to see a psychic, a fortune teller with her. As a teenager, who wouldn't? Everybody wants to know what the future holds, right? So we did. We went. And literally, this woman was in this house. She lived on the 2nd floor. And in her room, in her table, there were literally a crystal ball. She's a psychic. And basically you can ask her any questions and, and she reads and she tells you. So when I asked her, like, what our future was going to be like, what I'll be doing, because obviously you want to know, so you know what to take when you go to university or college and stuff. So she said something that was really interesting. The only thing I remember actually was she said, whatever you'll be doing in the future, it doesn't exist today. And that's what she said to me. So this was in the 80s, before the internet, the computer, I didn't even know. So I have no idea what she was talking about. And so I thought, okay, that was a waste of money. So from high school to university, I decided to pursue my passion of creativity and went to study fine arts. And in the fine art program, I did graphic design and photography as my major. And these were the tools that we were being taught and used. I actually still have a drafting table in my parents' basement that they're anxious for me to get rid of. My drafting table actually have a green cutting mat on it, which was very functional at the time. The trolley that you see on the top right-hand corner, it's my partner actually still have that. It's still sitting beside his desk. And that was really the camera we used. It was my dad's, and I would spend hours in the darkroom doing black and white photos and stuff. And the tools that you see on the bottom left here is like, I still have, and I keep on thinking one day I might be able to use it, but probably not. And in my third year in university, I was very fortunate that I landed a summer job at a local print shop near the university campus. The company was called Alpha Graphics, and it was a printer, but they also had two small little Mac computers that would be doing desktop publishing. So this is my first time being exposed to this cute little computer. And I was hired as a graphic designer, and I was told by the owner that this is a really easy to use computer. There's some basic software there, and this is what you're going to be used to crank out all the design work that comes through. So whether that's business card stationery, brochures, letterhead forms, whatever, this is what you're going to use. And she said, it was very easy to use. If I can learn it, so can you. So I sat there and I started playing around with it. The basic fundamental software was Mac Paint, Mac Draw, Word. And the two most software that I used the most was PageMaker, which is today evolved into InDesign, and Freehand, which is today's version of Illustrator. So it was fun. I get to create and design every day, and there was only a handful of fonts: Geneva, Chicago, Palatino, Times. Nothing spectacular, but yeah. And I think the thing was, computer, Mac, really totally revolutionized the whole graphic design industry. All those tools that you see on the previous slide, they became pretty much obsolete. And a lot of companies, it was a big disruptor. Like, companies like old typesetting houses, they would no longer exist. They became obsolete. And then, but at the same time, there was also new companies that cropped up, and everything that you see now, it's all done by, computer. Software has evolved into leaps and bounds, But the thing is, technology didn't affect just the graphic design industry. It also, affect a lot of non-STEM careers, such as teaching. When COVID started, all the teachers all of a sudden have to learn and adapt, and they all have to learn how to do teaching over conference call, a virtual conference, and and they all have to learn all these tools. Other non-STEM career oriented also include farming, and nursing, So the thing is, so even though you might not have chosen a STEM career, but there'll always be a STEM component, to some extent, even for a lot of non-STEM career. computer essentially is like a tool, just like a hammer and a chisel, right? So you could do great things with it. So, I mean, like, Michelangelo obviously did fabulously just using the tool. And with the right software, and mastery of all the tools and stuff, you could create magnificent art, right? So the idea is that the more proficient you are at it, at any given tool, the better you're at it, and you can think outside the box. I was very, very fortunate. I mean, the thing is, like, I literally evolved along the technology line so that in the mid-90s, I had opportunity to work as a creative director for an interactive CD-ROM publishing company. So for those of you, I guess, like, this interactive CD-ROM came and go within the decade. It was one of the things. So this was all before the internet. And working as in a publishing company, it was amazing because we could create all kinds of titles we wanted. We would be one week we'll be teaching people how to do cooking and or golfing or any kind of sports, and teaching kids how to do ABCs and read and write, and from gamings, right, and entertainment. So we created over hundreds of titles. It was amazing. You could do anything that you want. But the thing was, it was because of my experience of user interface design that I got headhunted, and that led me to a web development company as a creative director, which eventually I left. And in 2001, I started my own company that I could provide total design solution using all the skills that I had in the past. And the thing was, by 2010, apps and ebooks were introduced into the market, and really kind of evolved. And it was something that I just really had to learn, what is app, what is all these ebook, how to produce these things so that I could offer these services to my client. So I spun up a company called Ripple Digital Publishing, right? And my partner came up with the name because Splash makes Ripple. So that's kind of how the name came about. And it was fun. It was my playground. It was how I learned, how to develop apps, and publish ebooks, and stuff. And it was fun. It was a lot of fun. So the thing is, being an Asian woman, I face stereotypic bias, and I overcome them by staying focused on producing results that win people over. And I think that's one of the key things. Hearing how people comments, because I never see myself as an Asian woman. But the thing is, ironically, I've been, commented, and people in my past, oh, it must be really challenging for me being a tiny Asian woman to head up this department. And I just kind of look at them and I says, really? I don't think I ever see myself as that. I see myself as a human being, hired to do a job, and as long as I can do the job and deliver the results, you can win people over. And that has always served me well, And so I think, if there's any piece of advice to anybody that's in that situation, I would just say, stay focused on the work, and win people over with the results, that what you deliver, right? And really, that's really how you earn respect. One other thing I admire in the digital community is for its inclusivity and diversity. I mean, I've worked with people all over the world where I've never met, before video conferencing, there was conference call. You would send files over, right? And then there was this little device in the middle of the boardroom where people just talk it over and say that, you're on this page, and, and you even meet these people, right? And projects would start and end, and then eventually, video conferencing gained popularity, especially during COVID. And yeah, you get to see some of the people. But the thing is, at the same time, half the time you're sharing screen because you're working, right? So you still don't really see the people in a sense, right? Because the thing is that, and so nobody really cares because everybody's just focusing on the work and task, and delivering these results to make sure that we meet the deadlines and you can deliver the work and promise. So, I mean, that's one of the things I really admire in terms of the digital community. And the other thing I admire in the digital community is that people are very, very giving. It's like, anytime I'm stuck, I'm learning new software or a piece of code, or just some of the things that I'm just stuck on. Like I Google, and to be sure, someone will give you the answer because someone will, in the other side of the world, has probably encountered the same issue, and they will lay out the steps for you, even videos sometimes, and show you how to resolve these issues. And I just think that that's amazing, Another thing I find amazing is that people love sharing, right? All the photos that you've seen in this presentation, a lot of them are stock images, and some of them are free, Creative Commons. I don't even have to pay for it, right? And I see, and when I source images, I find this incredible art. It's just incredible. It's like, oh my God, this is amazing, right? So it really, really makes you humble in terms of when you see all the wealth of the knowledge that's out there. So in 2012, I had this epiphany that it was time for me to give back. And I wanted to do a way where that it was something that I wanted to do, not because I have to do, because I mean, yeah, in my past life, I volunteered before at other, events in charity because I've been asked by friends, and I would do it because I was asked. So it was more like a commitment. It was because you felt like you had to do it. But I want to do something that I want to do, not because I have to do, right? And so I thought, okay, well, what would that be? Well, it has to deal with creativity because that's my passion, right? So yeah, so I started a small not-for-profit initiative that results in today, a 100% volunteer-run educational charity, that's Canada-wide, that advocates creative literacy. So all the programs are free. Is for grades 4 to 12, and we offer these 3 community programs. And why creative literacy? Well, creative literacy builds confidence, boosts imagination, promotes creative thinking and problem solving. And these are the skills that these kids will need to help to navigate this complex world, right? So I just felt that if I had to do something and invest, why not invest in the kids? Because they are our future, right? So, and honestly, Ripple Foundation is only possible because I'm combining my STEM skills and all the non-STEM skills that I learned from my education, such as communications, visual communication, branding, marketing, so that I can create these print, digital, to promote, these social and impact change. We are 100% volunteer run, and as you can see, majority of them are female. Right, and it's really because I think female tends to be more giving and in nature, and and one thing that I find that it's amazing is that they come in because we're in Canada, and so it's without effort. We have these diverse group of people from all ages and all different ethnicity background. And I just kind of honored to be working with all these many amazing people, right? And one of the things is that since female tends to be giving, and there's so many STEM fields that have potential to impact society positively, we definitely need more females to involve in these fields to help address social issues and really make a difference in this world. It is my passion for creativity that led me to this technology path. And in this technology-driven world, technology plays a crucial role in achieving our goals. And all we need is an open mind and willingness to learn. So whatever your interests and goals are, just remember that creativity is the core of all innovations, and you can achieve anything you set your mind to. So I just want to leave with these 3 key insights, from my learnings, is that STEM skills are essential in today's evolving market. So this means that even whatever careers you're in right now, there will always be a STEM component, and you would need that. And we definitely need more female in the STEM field to drive positive societal impact, to kind of balance the scales a bit, and really you have to adapt, and have a growth mindset to thrive in this technology-driven world, And these are some of the resources that I'm familiar with. I actually spoke with a high school girl that she belonged to the Girls Who Code, and she told me how all the positive impact she had with this organization. So it's pretty amazing. And some of these other, like Khan Academy, Coursera, and edX, I'm sure you've heard of them before. They offer a lot of free and affordable online courses that you can learn at your own pace. So which is pretty amazing. And I want to leave you with this quote. I mean, who doesn't like Michelle Obama? I mean, she's one of the most inspirational, female of all time, right? That the only limit to the height of your achievement is the reach of your dreams and your willingness to work hard for them. And that's it. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Ivy. Thank you so much. So many thoughts were running through my head, but the main thing that I want to put out there is you're like our own Steve Jobs. I totally expected you to have a very interesting presentation, and you truly lived up to that. Just through pictures, you've managed to inspire us all. So even more than stars, I think that creates that is a lot of talent, just to speak through the story through pictures. I did have one comment that came through that I wanted to ask, and I think it was very adept to the hour right now. Metaverse. We are basically creating artistic rooms and areas within the digital world. Is that something that you have seen being impacted through the work and the domain that you are doing? How has that kind of impacted either positively or negatively in your opinion?
Well, I mean, the thing is, I know that one of the big things everybody is concerned about is the AI, right? I think what you're referring to, right, how AI is going to put a lot of writers and artists out of work and out of job and, and stuff, right? And I think at the end of the day, as I said earlier, is that at the end of the day, computer, they are tools, right? I mean, even when you work with AI, you still need to tell them what to do. They don't draw out of drawing. You still need to prompts. You still need to. I mean, it's interesting. I was playing with obviously these AI tools, right? And you got to learn the prompts. You got to learn how to talk with them, right? So at the end of the day, it's a tool just like anything else, right? So I think you shouldn't be afraid of it. Okay, you should kind of learn it, and learn to work with it, It's funny because if you look back in history, right? So back in history, right? So when radio came, when camera was introduced, that they could take pictures, right? Before people would paint portraits, right, of people. Oh my God, that's photography now. You're gonna take all the painters out of job. No one's gonna want to paint portrait. Everybody's just gonna take photos. But that didn't really happen, right? So the thing is, if you look at history, as how we evolve, right? Every time, there's something new, we get scared and there's a disruptor. Of course, there's a disruptor. This was like a graphic design, yes, there was a whole bunch of people that lost a job because there's no more traditional typesetting. But guess what? There was a whole bunch of new jobs that also came about, in terms of how publishing was going to be, right? So anytime there is a disruption in the society, people are afraid, right? And I think it's instead of being afraid, we just need to look back in history and how we dealt with it, and that we should be using the same thing because we need to learn from the past, and that's how we learn to grow, and that's how we evolve, right? So I don't instead of being fear and say, oh my God, it's going to take away my job, or whatever. Okay, figure out how you can work with it and learn it, and how to become more productive, if anything, right? So, and I think it's the attitude of what you think and how you see it.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you for that, Ivy. So change is constant, people. Always be on the lookout for what's coming and kind of adapt yourself to that. And that makes life interesting. I know there are a couple more questions that came through chat, but in the interest of time, we're going to be powering on. Thank you again, Ivy, for sharing your thoughts.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, of course. And with that, we're going to be moving on to our next speaker. We have another world traveler, as we did with Yingli, a tech enthusiast, a problem solver, an entrepreneur, and most of all, if you have interacted with Shokafe, she is unapologetically herself. There's nothing that would make her change for anything or anybody, right? So Shokafe Muragi, we're really happy to have you here. She's a graduate in environmental geosciences. She has pivoted her career from a very interesting perspective. When I heard about it for the first time, I was like, oh, those are worlds apart. She is also the former CEO at Online Reading Tutor. And whenever I hear from her, I'm always like, what exactly have you not done, Shokafe? So she has kind of touched on everything and anything, right? So I welcome you to join us today to share a bit more about your journey. Take it away.
Thank you for that amazing introduction. I would like to record that and have that every time I go into a meeting. Such a confidence boost. Actually, that ties into my presentation today because I was asked to prepare this and I was like, I prepared a whole different slide deck and I was like, we're going to talk about, statistics. And then Bono was like, no, we should talk about your experience. I was like, oh no, that's going to be it's hard to talk about oneself. So I did pivot as these amazing women were talking. So that just goes to, the importance of being dynamic in the ever-changing world that we live in. Thank you again for the introduction, Bono. So I'm going to sort of share my slide deck. Can you see this?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Is that changing as I'm?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
It is on the background slide now.
Okay, good. So my name is Shokafe. I'm a product leader and entrepreneur. But how did I come to this world? That's sort of what Banu also said. So I'm originally from Iran. I was born and raised in Tehran. My father is Iranian, my mother is British. So I was raised in Iran. And in Iran, according to UNESCO statistics, 53% of all students that go into university are women. However, only 17% enter the workforce. That's a huge gap. And unfortunately, as we speak today as well, Iran is going through a very big change. Women are asking for justice and equality in that country. A little bit about myself. So in high school in Iran, you have to pick a major. It's either physics, math and physics, sciences, or arts. I picked maths and physics, not only because in that environment, everyone should be an engineer, lawyer, or a doctor, but really because I enjoyed physics and mathematics. It made a lot of sense to me. I could actually see it. It was very tangible. So I picked math and physics. But then, I got to sort of the university stage. I was like, what do I want to do? I picked environmental geosciences because it had maths, it had physics, and it had chemistry. So I was like, great, all the different things. I was definitely challenged when I moved to the UK to study in one of UK's top universities because, as a math and physics major, I was just solving problems. I never had to research things. I never had to write projects or argue my point of view or my findings. So that was a big challenge in university that I overcame, and I studied hard. So if it took my peers 2 hours to finish a project, it took me 4 to 6 hours. So there was definitely a challenge there. And then in my professional life, which I will sort of dive into a bit more, I went down the path of solving world's biggest problems, specifically in education technology, for the past 15 years. But how did I get to that? Sort of Banu's introduction to me. When I went back to Iran after my graduation, I quickly sort of realized that working for oil and gas companies wasn't the right thing for me. So I started teaching English as a side gig until I figured out what's next. And this was in my early 20s. And very quickly, I came across a problem in the ESL industry. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna solve this. This is a passion of mine, and I'm gonna solve it. And I solved it by creating a community, as you can see here in Tehran. And then we went to Avatech, one of Iran's first accelerator programs. I didn't know what they were. I didn't know how to code. I was never in the tech space ever. But as I entered the accelerator program, I learned as I went on. And it was a challenge because I was the only female founder in my first cohort. So it was definitely diversity was an issue. But as you can see here, I started T-Talk, which was a mobile app for peer-to-peer learning and blended learning, and learned a lot from that experience. Where did that experience take me? We got an angel investor, and then we sort of traveled to Chile. We were accepted to participate in Startup Chile out of 2,900 teams, actually. So they only selected 90 teams, and we were one of them, and we're very proud. Again, this is in my mid-20s. So I packed up my life in Iran and moved literally across the world. And in Santiago, Chile, I met with a lot of other entrepreneurs, held a lot of startup weekend workshops. Not only was I learning, but I was also trying to give back to the community. I was by no means a master of all the things that I was teaching, but I was learning as I went along, and I gave back to the community by teaching what I learned, or at least sharing what I learned. Here, I'm actually at a university in Santiago, teaching young entrepreneurs business model canvassing, very, very basic things in sort of how to become an entrepreneur. There were a lot of hard times, and this is here me in again Santiago going for an incubation program. I don't know if you guys know, but incubation is where entrepreneurs at the early stages of their company go, and they offer a lot of mentorship. They offer capital, like funding. They offer resources to other investors and other entrepreneurs. So I was seeking every opportunity that I could get my hands on to learn from my community around me, whether it was other entrepreneurs, whether it was other people in other industries, other domain experts. So I was always seeking learning opportunities. And then, so with T-Talk, going back to what Starlee said, I was struggling with work-life balance. I didn't know what it was. I would say I fell under the workaholic sort of category. After 4.5 years, I did burn out. And even though the startup was going really well, I think my brain was sort of fried. So I left, and I was like, okay, I'm going to move to Europe. And I moved to Germany, where my brother was at the time, and started a whole new thing. I took some time off from entrepreneurship and finding my next thing. So I started teaching CFOs, CEOs, CPOs effective communication skills in Berlin, Germany. And and then I also pushed myself. So I wanted to become an academic. So I started this academic course. I passed a little bit, but I failed. So why am I sharing this story? I was curious and I went down the path. I learned a lot. I actually found one of my best friends in the world through this program, and I failed at the end. But that was good because it was another added experience to my portfolio. I now know that academia is not for me. So that's good. So that was Berlin, and I was there, Berlin, Germany, and I took some time off and I traveled the world in Europe. And then after 2 years, I moved to Canada. So where I am today, 3.5 years ago, I moved to Canada, Toronto, Canada. And I joined a company called Online Video Tutor as the CEO and Chief Product Officer. The goal was to build a software that we could teach dyslexic and children with reading disabilities how to become fluent in literacy. So I think everyone would agree here. It's a very impactful mission that I wanted to be part of. And I had, I built a very incredible team. I had an amazing team around me of a lot of women actually, but also men. Shout out to Nicole, who's actually in this seminar today, who's my product designer. She's been my right hand for almost 2 years now. And so, yeah, so that's sort of my story. Now, before I get to that one, through this experience that I shared with you all, what is the gist? What is the summary? Is that, you know, throughout my entire career, I did face a lot of discrimination for being a woman in entrepreneurship, being the only female founder in a lot of the groups that I was in, being from the Middle East. And you know, I faced these sort of discriminations and hardships both internally within my team, but also externally. And it did hurt a lot. A lot of the times it was painful, and there was a lot of times that I wanted to sort of quit, quote unquote. But tenacity, perseverance, staying true to who I was, which is, you know, internally I'm a problem solver. So if you give me a problem, I want to solve it. And staying true to myself and my community around me, and staying open-minded, and having that thirst for learning, and also sharing my learnings with others is what has brought me here. I've always been open about my strengths and weaknesses, which is another skill that I have, is that I create a group of community around me of mentors. So I'm always learning from others, pushing myself in every direction that I can. Sometimes they fail, like I've mentioned, sometimes they don't, and they succeed. So always be open to learning new things, being true to yourself, even if it's difficult, because a lot of the times you are going to be put in difficult situations. And as far as diversity in the workforce for STEM, I have been blessed to have a lot of allies, both women and men in my career. So a few of the speakers here also mentioned that it's good to have a group conversation around this from not only women, but also men that we work with alongside men every day. And I've been blessed to have both as my allies in my career. So find that community that empowers you, and lead with your strengths and fill in the gaps of your weaknesses. Now, for me, what's you know, the future of education technology, which is something that I'm passionate about, are all these topics that we've discussed around artificial intelligence, virtual reality, blended learning, and I'm very curious to see what happens next. And I'm always ready to join impactful teams and communities such as this one as well. That's for me. Thanks for having me. It's been an honor to be here alongside other speakers. I feel out of place almost because you're all superstars. But if there are any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. And I had other things like, you know, resources and things, but I'll share them in another talk. Banu.
Yes, no, that definitely, I appreciate that. And I'm sure people will be interested in what we can do. Is we can do some online, or sorry, I should say offline engagement as well by sharing some of these resources. But thank you so much for that, Shokofe. And I hope everyone understood what I meant by saying someone who's unapologetically herself and really is a trailblazer in terms of like whatever she wants to do, she just plows through. It's amazing to hear her energy through some of the experiences that she has shared. And again, this is just a small slice of who she is, and there's a lot more to discover about her. So I do hope that you follow through the links that we have shared through chat in terms of what Shokofe is doing in terms of her career as well. One thing I wanted to ask you, Shokofe, is you did speak about starting and restarting your life, the number of times you moved, the number of times you felt like something didn't go the way that you planned. I hate the stigma that comes along with the word failure, because people just automatically assume it's something bad, but really it's just something, a goal that you didn't achieve this time, but the next time it'll happen, or it'll happen in a different way. That perseverance of restarting yourself, Can you share some of the skills that you kind of tapped into? Obviously, we need to have that inner strength to kind of rely on our confidence. But apart from that, what is it that pushed you on to restart yourself every time? Because we've got a lot of people joining us from various parts of the world, and they want to move to other places as well. They want to migrate to new places and new beginnings. So what is it that's something that you tapped into when it came to restarting yourself again and again?
I think for me, the concept of, because with traveling, it's an interesting thing. With traveling, you sort of reinvent yourself, you deconstruct yourself in every shape or form, whether it's your belief system, whether it's your cultural background, whether it's whatever it is. When you travel, I think being really open to hearing different stories, different backgrounds, different belief systems to yourself, and really not being judgmental, actually listening to the stories behind them, it's very empowering, and you learn a lot. So I'll give you an example. When I moved to Germany, and coming from a Middle Eastern background, you hear a lot of people saying, oh, for example, Germans are very cold. That's not true. That's so not true. They do have a very different culture, but in my opinion, it was very eye-opening. It was really a very respectful culture, a very old culture of how they perceive work. Actually, they're amazing at the work-life integration. If they have a hobby, it's a serious hobby. In the Middle East, that's not what I was brought up with. It's either your career or it's nothing, right? So really being open when you travel. Don't I always say, don't go into conversations with these pre-requirements or your cultural background or your learnings. Go in by really being open to learning new things and really listening and learning from that opportunity. So that's really what made the entire journey of me going from Iran to South America to then Europe a very joyful experience.
That is amazing. I really liked how you said it reduces the judgments that you make about people, because we as women face that, immediately, right? As even Ivy was mentioning, she was seen as someone who's a small Asian woman. Like, I don't even know what that statement means. What has that got to do with the power that you wield inside of you, right? There are just so many judgments that we have to live through, even without doing anything. You just have to show up in a room and people see you a certain way and you're like, how, why, what?
Yeah.
But that being said, thank you so much for that powerful story. And there are a couple more questions that came through, but again, I'm going to power through and we will get back to you offline to get some of your feedback there. And last but not the least, today we have a very, very patient presenter who has been waiting for her turn after all those amazing speakers. So Yvette Cortez is what I envision a calming river to be. So I think, after a whole days of work, you do a few yoga postures and you're breathing out for that calmness. I think we have positioned you exactly right after all these powerful presentations, because she's definitely a very calming force. But don't mistake her calmness, because she is fully forceful when it comes to building more diverse workplaces, building bilingualism. And growing up as a Guatemalan in Chicago, she has channeled her lived experiences to develop a better world for young girls, to get them a seat at the table. Please join me in welcoming Yvette Cortez from Seattle. Yvette, the stage is yours.
Thank you so much, Banu, for that intro. And also, I mean, I've loved every moment of this morning. So thank you all for sharing everything. I'm gonna see if this is, there we go. I may be the one to have technical difficulties here.
Oh, we almost evaded it today.
I know, right? Let me see. Okay. There we go. All right. Now let's see if it's going perfect. Hooray. Can everyone see my screen now?
Yep, we can. It's on the
All right.
title page, Transition and Pivots.
Great. All right. Well, thank you again, everyone, for inviting me. This has been so inspirational. I love hearing stories from women across all STEM fields, and just noticing how much in common we all have. And I am going to reach out and have some tea with every single one of you. It's just been amazing. So again, thank you. Today, I'll be talking to everyone about transitions and pivots in your career, and the change in you with you guys. So I'm Yvette. I wear many hats. I'm a DEI advocate. I'm a mama of 2 monsters. I'm a writer of many things, a program manager, and a career changer and wrangler. And for this next several minutes, I will share some tips on how you can also do the same. So probably one of the first things that you'll ask yourself is, where do I begin? Like, I know that I want to do something different. I know that, there's something more for me, but where do I begin? And I was there too. I started off as a social worker after graduating university. Then I went into education, and now I'm here in technology as a project manager. Where do I begin? Where did I begin? And there were 3 things that I recommend, and 3 things that I did in my transition. And the first one was think of where you want to go. I thought, I thought of how much time you spend at work, 40, 50 hours a week, maybe depending on the project. Where do you want to spend that time? Do you want to spend it is your goal to be a millionaire, which, hey, no shame in that game? Then great, then align with that. If your goal is to, provide women with more opportunities for growth, then what does that look like? So align your yourself, what your vision is, or what your values are, to the next step. Also set SMART goals. One of I love celebrating things. Banu and I have shared meals and time to celebrate our wins along the way. So set SMART goals so that they're specific, they're measurable, achievable, they're relevant to where you want to be, and then they're time constrained. So within the next 6 weeks, I am going to learn X, Y, and Z. Or within the next 2 months, I'm going to apply to, 10 scholarships or 10 positions, right? Things of that nature. And then, of course, this is a perfect example, building your network. Talking with people, reaching out, seeing if someone has something in common or somewhere or has a career that you're interested in. Reaching out, expanding your friendships. Sometimes you'll, unfortunately though, sometimes you'll learn that what you originally thought was your plan, right? Was what you wanted to do. For example, I was an educator. I've always loved technology. When I received my first computer, I must have been like 12 or 13. So it was back in the MS-DOS days. So I had to hack in order to get into the computer and then have the computer do something fun for me. So so I've always loved technology. I always wanted to, knew how to use it, knew how to make or do fun things with it, but I just didn't pursue it as a career. So at this moment was when I decided, well, I'm in education, but I think I want something different. And the different thing I want is I want to program. I want to go into technology. And in my mind, and one of the previous wonderful women speaking mentioned that they thought technology meant programming. So I was like, well, that makes sense. I used to, hack Microsoft DOS, so that means I have to be a programmer. So I'm going to be a programmer. But sometimes that doesn't quite work out. It isn't exactly what you thought or what you think it's going to be. So what if it doesn't work out? As I was mentioning, I started my career pivot as a programmer. I set my SMART goal. I went to a boot camp academy. I learned how to program. I did a few one-off projects. I created websites for friends, for businesses, small businesses. That's what I was doing. But I realized that it was kind of a lonely, for me at least, it was a lonely place, as Banu mentioned, and as you probably tell, I love just speaking and being present with people and learning about them, and then sharing what I know, so with others, and I didn't find that as a programmer. So it was difficult. I had already gone through the entire pivot of going from education to programming, and now here I was thinking to myself, I kind of made a huge mistake, because this is not. I don't like this. I'm so lonely in this job, and so I thought back into what it was that I initially wanted in the beginning. So it's important to know that it doesn't always work out for everyone. When you go on this journey of pivoting your career, you started off doing something other than where you are at this moment, or you want to go somewhere other than where you are currently in your career. Know that it isn't always going to work out. And maybe it will, and that would be great. But it doesn't always. It's difficult to know how that transition is going to be. And really you have to learn and it's a big learning curve. You have to be flexible, and you have to learn to sort of go with the journey, just flow, right? You're not alone. So like I mentioned, it didn't work for me. So there was a former educator. I knew front-end technologies. I knew how to create websites, design, and all these cute little things. But it wasn't what I envisioned. I really felt lonely in that. So what did I do? I volunteered. I took what I had learned and I took it back to where I started originally. And I found an organization here in the US called Chick Tech. And I went to one of their events, and I saw that that's where I learned that STEM has so many facets, and there are so many opportunities within STEM where you're touching technology or you're like working with engineers, but sort of on the periphery. And I started volunteering. I volunteered as a chaperone to their teen talks. I sort of, dabbled a little bit on their website design. I used my talents. I used what I had to teach the next generation, to provide help or just mentorship for the next generation. And through that came the opportunity to then teach how to program to high school girls. And that sparked something in me that it was just amazing. So I decided that I would take that class and I would design a curriculum around it, and then build my own company. So I went back to the school where I was teaching. I spoke with the principal. I said, look, this is the curriculum I've built. I know that I can launch a middle school tech program, and I can mentor the teachers. And she looked through it. She looked at the business plan. She accepted it, and that's what I did leading up to the pandemic. So kind of looping into what we were talking about, education and teachers having to learn how to use technology and how to share curriculum over Zoom, over Teams. That I hit that wave right before it started. And fortunately, the teachers that were in my classes before the pandemic felt so much more supported, so much more prepared to teach their students through the pandemic. So it just, again, it's that, you just go with the journey. You have to flow with that journey, and it works out in the end. So all of that just happened, as I said, right around the beginning of the pandemic. And it just so happened that Chick Tech decided that they wanted me to stay on board as the national program manager for the national conference. I did that, and eventually with that opportunity, I met several people who continued to mentor me through my transition as I learned how to move away from programming again into yet another career, program management. So how to navigate those challenges? Again, you have to have grace for yourself, especially when you make such big changes, right? It's not, these are huge changes. This isn't like deciding whether you're going to have pancakes or Pop-Tarts for breakfast. This is something that's going to make an impact on your life, on the life of those around you, of your family. If you have a family, or if you're watching over your parents or family members who may be sick, these are big decisions. So when you decide, yes, I'm going to do it, you have to be aware and also know to have grace for yourself, because it's not going to be like point A to point B. There's all over the place. You have to understand and learn about STEM adjacent careers. There are so many. As I mentioned, I started as programmer, and then I went into ed tech, educational technology. Then I stayed within. After Chick Tech, I bounced over to Microsoft to lead their boot camp. So education again, and diversity, equity, and inclusion, sort of melding that together. And then an opportunity popped up within sustainability or eco-technology, which is another passion of mine, right? The environment, as we know, the environment is something that we haven't taken very good care of in the past, and now we're seeing impacts of that. So it was important for me to pivot once again into technology and how we can use technology to be better to the environment. So that's what I'm currently doing now as a project manager within the ops team in sustainability at Starbucks. So you have to know that there are other STEM adjacent and careers, and that they're there for you. You can do it. You belong there. And seek a mentor that will tell you that all the time. I'm fortunate to have several mentors, Banu included. I'll reach out and I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing? And just having that network, having that that village, that tribe with you constantly, and reaching out and not being afraid to continue building your path to understanding that things will change, but your strength and resilience will outweigh that, will outpass that. And the picture that I have here, and I just always think of this is me climbing one of the taller walls here at one of the wall climbing places. But this was after a couple of months of being terrified of like what was going to happen if I kept going. But you have to continue, as scary as it is, as as ill-prepared as you feel. If you build your network correctly and with the correct sort of growth mindset, then you can reach that bell at the top. So thank you, everyone. Again, you can reach out to chat at any time. You can find my writings on my Medium, and then you can also reach out on LinkedIn. But thank you all so much for being here today and for letting me chat a little bit about my experience.
I was not wrong when I said you will give that feel of a yoga session. We all feel like we've just gone through that last shavasana that they end the practice with, energized, but at the same time relaxed. Amazing talk, Yvette. Thank you so much. It's amazing how you talk like it's matter of the fact, but your words are so heavy with so much message and information. I had one question for you, and in the interest of time, we're going to keep it to a 1 minute mark, if that's okay. One of the things that you showed with that rock climbing thing, right? That whole concept of fearing something that you have to get into, and constantly putting that off to get to it whenever you do. How do you deal with that whole procrastination aspect? Because whatever we fear, we tend to keep it for the last. It's like how we never work on our, this is a bit of a morbid example, but we never talk about our wills. We never talk about how our assets are going to be dealt with, because we don't even want to think about what happens when we die, right? It's something we fear and we put that away. And when you translate that into, your own life, you're like, oh, this career change is going to be tough for me. And I don't know when I'm going to do it, but I hate my job, but I don't know what to do else. Right. So can you share a little bit about that procrastination aspect and how you can kind of work around it in a minute?
Yeah, in a minute. I mentioned at the end and at the beginning the importance of mentorship and building your network. And that was really important for me. I am an extrovert, so I will talk to anyone about anything at any time. But but that is not only a strength of mine, but also what I use to kind of get me out of that stagnation, right? You know, when I feel that when something scary comes up or something that's going to be difficult and I don't want to face it right now, I reach out. I reach out to my network. I reach out to my mentors, and I, you know, just sort of rubber ducky with them, rubber duck the what I'm fearful of, and a lot of times just talking through that helps me. And I mean, I recommend that your friends, your mentors, and I honestly feel that my network are my friends. You know, I put a lot of time into everyone on my LinkedIn. Like, I will talk with you, I will reach out to you, and I will ask you questions. And so I use that. I leverage those relationships, those conversations to kind of, you know, nudge me a little bit. And there have been times where like a friend of mine will be like, you need to just stop and just get on with it, right? Like, you've told me this 4 times already. You need to get working on it. And that works, you know. So that's what I recommend.
Amazing. Buddies are important. Good buddies are important. And with that, I thank you, all our speakers. I know a lot of you have hung around for the 2 hours, shared so many great thoughts. I would like to pass it off to Olga, who is kindly going to close the session for us today. But we will keep this conversation going. Please follow us on LinkedIn, and please do make sure to send in your questions as well. We will make sure that we get our perspectives from the speakers too. Olga, over to you.
We're going to try to do this in 20 seconds. So thank you so much for this collective wisdom that we have had the opportunity to be in presence with. The International United Women Federation, thank you from the bottom of our hearts for your time, your dedication, and also for inspiring us to be the best that we can be for women around the world. And we hope that the new girls, the new generations, take from you in the path that you had been just driving into this world. And as we always said, it is only by working together that we can create a more just and equitable world for all women and girls in the world. So thank you for all of this hard work and all your messages for our audience. Thank you for being engaged, your questions and comments, your likes, hearts and everything. So it makes it very, very engaging. So we look forward to seeing you all and your networks and your tribes and communities in the next events that we're going to be organizing so we can inspire more women and girls to be in STEM. Have a lovely rest of the day. Thank you.